Could there exist a science about the future? Is it possible to study the future like you study the past? It would be a fascinating subject to explore. But wait, have you heard about futurism and futurist studies? If you're anything like me, you just dismissed this possibility altogether and never considered futurism as something serious. Boy, was I wrong. Let's explore the truth behind this mysterious profession. Hello everyone! My name is Maya and I am an aspiring futurist from Silicon Valley. In my last video, I shared a story about how I discovered a dream job that I never even knew existed – Futurism. It has now become my passion and something I'm determined to pursue as a career. But the thing is, when I first heard of it, I couldn't believe that it was an actual profession. So let's explore why being a futurist sounds like such a weird job. We will dig into the most common misconceptions surrounding futurists. Let's unmask the 4 biggest myths about futurism that prevented me, and probably you, from considering it as a real profession. In this video, you will not only discover the many benefits of having a futurist mindset, but also learn why futurist skills are essential for virtually all professions in the 21st century. Let's dive in. Myth number 1. Futurism is not scientific. When I first heard about futurism or futurology, I was skeptical, to say at least. I had this idea in my head that it was some kind of mystical or esoteric practice not based on any real scientific method or research. I thought that futurists were people who claimed to rely on psychic abilities or intuition to predict the future. I never considered that it could be a real legitimate field of study. But as I started to learn more about futurism, I began to realize that my initial perceptions were completely wrong. Futurism is also known as futurist studies, and it is a field of research that uses scientific principles to explore various scenarios and trends in order to anticipate the future. To my surprise, I discovered that futurists are not fortune tellers. They study data and analyze trends and patterns. Well, when I found this out, it changed my perception of the profession. With my past experience as a data analyst, I could certainly relate to the idea that futurism relies on data and research. Therefore, this profession gained credibility in my eyes. Futurists do not rely on magical thinking. Instead, they rely on critical thinking and evidence-based analysis. And by the end of this video, you will understand how futurist thinking can be beneficial for your career. But first, let's move on to the next stereotype, which is super widespread. Myth number 2 says that futurists predict the future, or that they claim to be able to predict it. It is such a strange thing to be discussing in the 21st century. Futurists do not use crystal balls, as we just found out it is a scientific field of study. And let me tell you a secret here. No one, not even the most advanced AI algorithms or supercomputers, can predict the future with absolute accuracy. Not even fortune tellers. The reason is that the future is uncertain and unpredictable by its nature. In fact, the future doesn't exist. There is no single predetermined future. Instead, at every point in time, there are multiple possible scenarios and outcomes. There are many alternative futures. Isn't that exciting? But wait. What is the point of being a futurist if you can't predict the future? Well, that's exactly what I'm about to tell you. But before I move on, let me draw your attention to this small detail that drove me crazy until I found out why it is so. Does the term futurist studies sound odd to you? Why not future studies? At first, my tongue just couldn't pronounce that combination of S consonants. Futures studies. Being a non-native speaker doesn't help either. By the way, if you are a native speaker of English, could you please leave a comment down below if the phrase futures thinking or futures Studies sounds natural to you. My spell checker tries to correct me every time. But it is not a mistake that the word futures here is in its plural form. This term is used quite deliberately. Futurists don't predict the future, they explore possible futures. That's why the field is called futures studies. Futurists never ask what will happen. Instead, they are interested in what could happen. Now that we cleared this up, let's go back to the question of what's the point of being a futurist if you can't predict the future? Some people think that since the future is unpredictable, there could be no work for futurists. But it is actually the opposite. The unpredictability of the future is precisely what makes futurists so valuable. They help us deal with the complexity and uncertainty of potential outcomes. Although it is impossible to accurately predict the future, it is still possible to identify patterns and trends that are likely to shape it. And that is what futurists do. They study the past and the present to anticipate future problems and possibilities. Futurists help us develop ways to prepare for the uncertainty and make better decisions today. They think the unthinkable and imagine the unimaginable. Isn't that cool? So yes, the future is uncertain and unpredictable, but there is definitely a role for a futurist. Now let's find out if this role is truly useful or is it just a fun thing to do. Myth number 3 declares that futurism is not practical. It was one of those thoughts that stopped me from considering being a futurist as a job. You might be asking, what's the purpose of exploring something that might not even happen? Or even, why waste energy worrying about a future if I can't change it anyway? There is a two-part answer to these questions. First, it is always worth to be prepared. Exploring different future scenarios trains our mental agility and helps us adapt better to whatever future might unfold. The second practical benefit of futurism is that it fosters a sense of agency in our thoughts about the future. Without it, life can feel like it is simply happening to you, leaving you a mere spectator to its unfolding. But the future is not something that happens to us, it is something that we create. Engaging in futurist thinking helps us make wiser decisions today that lead us to better tomorrow. So futurism is in fact very practical. But what if all that futurist thinking stuff is only relevant to big corporations, institutions and governments? Myth number 4 says that futurism works only for big organizations. Strategic thinking, foresight, long-term planning, scenario building, these things sound like they belong to a corporate world. And yes, futurists do help companies and governments prepare for the future. But the world is changing, you know. Today, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and freelancers can benefit from futurist thinking. And the world would benefit too if more individuals and solopreneurs and startup founders engaged in futurist thinking as early as possible in their professional journeys. So yes, these 4 myths are just that. Just myths, misconceptions and stereotypes. Futurism is scientific. Futurists do not predict the future, nor do they claim to, but they help to prepare for the future by exploring various different scenarios. And it is practical as it helps us to make better decisions. Futurism is not only relevant for large corporations and governments, but also for individuals like you and me. So, why not embrace the futurist mindset? It is for anyone who wishes to make informed decisions and stay ahead of the curve. By now, I hope you feel a bit less confused about futurism. To me, it is a fascinating field full of possibilities. That's why I decided to document my journey of becoming a futurist. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to push the like button and subscribe if you're interested in the future. Join me on this thrilling adventure as we explore the world of futurism together.